This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Let's get after it. Welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, along with the CTO, Michael Remis, coming off, to be honest, one of the best 16 hours as a sports fan I can remember in a long, long time. First things first, congratulations to Desiree Scott and the Canadian women's national team, gold medal champions at the Olympics. Hope you got up at 7 a.m. to catch it. A thrilling penalty shootout. We'll be all over that. Sean Fitz-Gerald's going to join us a little bit later on in the program. And how about them Winnipeg Blue Bombers? 19-6 winners yesterday at IG Field in a game that was much, much more than 60 minutes of three-down football, as 30,000 packed IG Field for a night that many of us have been waiting for a very long time, and I know many of us will not forget anytime soon. Right off the bat, want to thank all of our sponsors with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, including our newest sponsor, Canadian Club. I know there was quite a few CCs being poured at the game last night. Royal Sports, Not Autocorp, great to see Trev and the Not Gang out there last night. Paramount Services, as well as Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Little Brown Jug, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend, Aikens Lake, and Cool Bet Canada. So we're going to get into the Bombers, the CFL this week. Cannot wait to have John Hodge on, who's really turned into one of the great minds when it comes to CFL. Certainly does a great job covering the Bombers and the rest of the league, along with Jay Dunk over at 3 Down Nation. John is going to join us in a little while, and we will have much more on not just the Canadian women winning gold, but Andre DeGrasse getting another medal. A few great performances by the men on the track after it was the women that was carrying the mail and doing the winning for most of the first week of the Olympics. So it is going to be a great, great show. It is great to have you all with us. Welcome to everyone that is in chat right now, and great to see so many of you at last night's game. Let's get Remis in here. He popped into the game last night, and man, Rima, I don't even know where to start. I mean, I was already incredibly fired up to talk about last night's game and just how great it was to be back at IG Field and seeing so many friends, familiar faces, new faces, Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners. And I got to tell you, I mean, we came out, I think everyone was still buzzing after the game, and the good vibes just continued right into this morning with our women winning gold in one of the great sports victories in Canadian history, period, regardless of sport.
Hey everyone, I know there's people in chat. What's up, Rob? Yeah, what a great night it was last night at IG Field. Great win by the Bombers to kick off the season, and it did carry over into this morning. I'm here for morning sports. I think we should have some 8 a.m. NHL games. Let's have a Jets game at 8 a.m. It's awesome. You wake up, have a little coffee, watch a game. Incredible. I got pretty nervous for that penalty kick. Fleming, she's ice in her veins, and there she was again in the, what do they call it? I didn't call it a shootout, call it penalty kicks. Shootout? Is that what the proper
penalties,
term?
I believe. It's going to penalties.
Yeah. But what drama that was. And I said, it's so funny. Before this, we said, oh, we hate VAR. It sucks. We hate penalties. They got to figure a better way. I love VAR, and I love penalties now, Huss. It was an incredible drama. Sweden missing. You thought Canada had a lead. Then they missed a couple. Then Sweden had a chance to win over the net. And went to more sudden death penalties. I mean, you were shaking while watching it. You had tears in your eyes at the end. It was awesome to watch. And redemption from 2012. And you got a feel for Christine Sinclair, Desiree Scott, who were there. The veterans of the team. LeBay, you said put her on a stamp or something. Give her, I don't know what we're gonna do when the ladies come home.
Her Wikipedia's already been updated to read her position is the Canadian Minister of National Defense.
Yes,
which I got a kick out of. I mean, she was simply incredible, and that wasn't the first time. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that hadn't really seen much of the tournament up until today, but she was the author of an incredible turnaround in penalties in the quarterfinals against the Brazilians, making saves on the last two shots when Canada absolutely needed to before winning to move on to the semifinal against the United States. That one, fortunately, did not go to extra time. As you mentioned, Jessie Fleming nailing the penalty that gave Canada the 1-0 lead and eventually the victory. And Fleming did it again today. That young woman, ice in her veins is probably the best way to put it. I mean, a stone cold killer from the spot. She did it earlier in the tournament, did it in the semifinal, and did it again in the penalty shootout after scoring to equalize in the second half. So there are so many heroes on this team. But I really do want to single out Winnipeg's Des Scott and Christine Sinclair, the greatest of all time when it comes to women's soccer. And those two women have been with this program. They're the two holdovers from the 2012 Olympics with that incredibly controversial 4-3 loss to the United States in one of the greatest games I'm sure that's ever been played in women's soccer. And to see those two finally get the gold medal. And Sinclair, if you watch the medal ceremony, which was on, I don't know, probably an hour or so after the girls won, Sinclair put the medal on Desiree Scott, and you could see they're wearing masks, but you could see them talking to each other about, we finally did it. This is real. And then Sinclair getting the medal on and Des kind of behind pointing to her. It was such a cool moment. And Remo, I'm thinking about this more. I'll be interested to hear people in the chat. Like, where does this rank amongst the biggest victories in Canadian sports history? Because I got to tell you, I think it's up there. We are not a soccer nation, if you will. This is the most prestigious championship in the world when it comes to women's soccer. I mean, along with the World Cup, there's no World Cup this year. This is it. And, in addition to that question, you wonder what this does long-term for soccer, period, and not just on the women's side. We've seen the men's game improve over the last few years. The men's team, I think, is now, in the conversation to potentially qualify for the World Cup. But the women are world champs. I mean, they are Olympic gold medalists. And, I had to tell you, I mean, I do think that, we will see the ripple effect years to come, for what will go down as, certainly the greatest soccer victory in Canadian history. And as I said, I mean, I'm going to put it up there with any Canadian gold medal in hockey. I mean, in fact, this one might be more so because Canada's almost expected to win. The nature of the two upsets against the heavily favored Americans and Swedes adds a bit more to it. Not to mention, it's the first time they were able to do it. But it's a fun conversation to have, isn't it?
Yeah, and I saw a tweet that was like Canada in team sports at the Summer Olympics. There's been like a couple other teams, and it happened over 100 years ago. So this is a really historic event, especially in soccer. I mean, you mentioned Canada winning gold in hockey. I mean, they're favorites the whole way through. This team was not a favorite against U.S., not a favorite against Sweden. And, I mean, they're able to gut out a win, scoring with a free, penalty shot during the game, winning in penalty kicks after extra time. I mean, I know they moved the game because it was so hot there, but I'm curious how much it helped because they looked completely exhausted after the 2 extra times, drenched in sweat, leaving it all on the field. And I mean, the game had a bit of an ebb and flow. I mean, Sweden came off strong. They got the goal, but I think after that, Canada really settled in, had a couple of chances, had some pressure on. And then I think in the extra time, Sweden was really fighting, had an amazing chance. I haven't seen the replay, but even the broadcast team, like, how did that even not go in? It was on the goal line. You thought Sweden, I guess I don't want to say ended because it's not golden goal, but I mean, surely that would have been the game, and able to keep the ball out of the net. I mean, I know we had a historic night at IG Field, but we are buzzing. Social media is buzzing about this women's soccer. And it was a big morning. If you woke up this morning, a huge morning for Canada at the Olympics on the soccer field and also on the athletics track.
Yeah, Andre DeGrasse gets another addition to his hardware cabinet, leading Canada to a bronze medal in the 4x100 meter relay. And Remo, I got to tell you, I didn't expect to be watching the 5,000 meters, but I did. And I'm glad I did because Mo Ahmed, the Canadian gets the first ever medal for Canada in that distance, a silver medal. And I gotta tell you, that race looked it was exhausting just to watch it. And I guess it's a 400-meter track. The last lap he did in 55 seconds. I mean, to think about, running 460 meters and then being able to do a sub 100, so 1 minute 400 is mind-boggling. And he made up some serious ground. That kick he had to push him from 5th into 2nd in the final stretch, really final 150 meters, was amazing. So the men are picking it up on the track right now, but the story really is and will continue to be today, at least out of Tokyo, Canada's women's soccer team becoming Olympic champs.
Yeah, I watched the replay of that 5,000. It's funny how like the last lap is the fastest after you've already done so many laps there. But and then we had during the game, you could tune in for the 4x100. Andre DeGrasse, when he got the baton, he was in 5th, ended up in with the bronze. Watching him on those straightaways at the end. We saw it in the 200, and then it's today. I mean, it's awesome to watch that acceleration. But I agree. Everyone watching Canada's women's soccer team, incredible performance, winning gold, and very emotional. After the loss in 2012, we talked about it, full redemption. Even Abby Wambach putting out of it from former Team USA member. Battled Canada many times, putting out of it a video saying what she was proud of and very happy and emotional for Team Canada. I think everyone was because, again, Canada and soccer, you don't really associate that, but here they are, gold medal champs.
Well, and Destruction says it. Soccer is a global game. This might be the biggest sports moment, the biggest win in Canadian sports history when you put it that way. Certainly in the conversation, and it's a fun conversation to have. I know a couple of people have been mentioning they're hoping to see Des Scott, the Destroyer, on WST. We can tell you, we certainly will be looking forward to having Des, hopefully next week when the girls come home. Oh, and Cynthia Betancourt's popped in on the Super Chat. Thank you, Cynthia. What a game. Canadian women's soccer team has made us all proud. 2012, London avenged. This gold feels better than them all. I agree. I absolutely agree. And I told you all you needed to make a point on the weekend of watching that Canada-USA game. I hope that you did. And I think a lot of people, if they hadn't before, made sure that they were tuned in this morning to see the Canadian women make history for the first time ever as gold medal champs. So we will talk about that more with Sean Fitz-Gerald coming up. But I know there's a lot of people that want to talk about last night at IG Field. And we will get into the game with John Hodge, what the Bombers did do so well that reminded many people of the way they dominated the line of scrimmage in the Grey Cup. But Remis, let's talk about the game overall. I'll first off ask you, you got there a little more closer to game time. What was the experience like? How did you feel walking into the stadium, seeing all those people and feeling that atmosphere that was 2 years in the making?
Yeah, it was wild. There was a lot of firsts for me that I hadn't done in a long time. Coming into the game, I did walk in a bit late. I really didn't have much of a wait at the gate I was at, so that was pretty good. A lot of people hadn't been in a crowd of that size for a long time, but it was very cool to see some CFL football. I was following my DraftKings lineups the whole time. Did a number of laps around the concourse. Got some great walking in, and saw a lot of people I hadn't seen. I knew people were shouting out at me, saying how much they love what we're doing here. So I had a great time. I'm looking forward to going again. The game maybe wasn't the most exciting game, especially you thought the Ticats maybe were going to take it when they scored first, but full credit to Bombers, they played great. You thought the total of 51, it went way under, but Zach Collaros showed that he's the same guy he was before. Flashes of that famous play where he scrambled and found it was a Darvin Adams in the corner of the end zone. I think he tried to do that a couple times yesterday, but no Harris, no Adams. Oliveira stepped up. Kenny Lawler, who Milt Stiegel said he's going to double his output from last year. And it looked like Milt had some inside info yesterday, but awesome experience, and I can't wait to go back. I think a couple things We've seen comments in the chat maybe need to be worked out on the logistics end, and we can certainly get to that, and I can revisit one of my bad takes from yesterday. But that was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the rest of the CFL Week 1 this weekend.
Yeah, no doubt. And I just have to say, sort of echo what Remis said on a personal level. I mean, I got there early. I did mention I had a bunch of koozies on me, and I figured that, a few people would say, dude, I got in the one side and made it halfway down the west side of the stadium. And they were pretty much all gone. There was, and the response that we got just to people mentioning how much they're enjoying the podcast and the show was overwhelming. So I got to say thanks to everyone. It was great to see so many people that are regulars here. I met Jeff Kabilis, an OG from the start of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Was great to see him, but everybody that came out, everyone that watched yesterday and got one, anyone that asked later on when I was out, I'll do it again for the next game coming up next Friday. Anyways, just a personal note. Thanks to everyone. It was just overwhelming to see everybody again and to be in an atmosphere where everyone was so happy and so excited to be there. And as I said, it was a long time coming. I know I did see Carrie Owen here, Manitoba Small Town Drive-Ins Reviews. Check the channel, by the way. Very, very great stuff. Concession lineups need to be addressed. Now, I think all of us, bottom line, we're just thankful that we had the opportunity to go to the game and we're getting back some semblance of normalcy. And having worked on the side of the teams before getting into this side of work, I know how much goes into opening a season. And I can't even imagine what it would be like to do it with that sort of layoff when it comes to things like concessions. And maybe the most important thing is staffing. Like, we know how local restaurants right now are having a hell of a time getting people to work, literally in all positions across the industry. So I imagine that, there may be some significant challenges when it comes to just having enough people to staff everything. But I mean, everyone came there early. They were ready to drink. They were ready to eat. And unfortunately, and I did say, I mean, I was really nervous because I thought the cashless experience was going to be a bit of a disaster. And it was. I mean, I will stand by that. I mean, just the transactions took so much longer. They have to punch everything in, get it there. And I mean, the tipping, I'm not sure how much of a hit the staff took for it. But I mean, when you take that out and the tips go way down because of the way that the transactions are taking, probably even harder to get people to work. But I'll say one thing about Wade Miller. He has tackled every challenge head on. I'm sure that will be the feedback from the game. And listen, at the end of the day, this is a business too. Like, I don't know how much money was left on the table last night because people just physically didn't have the time or the will to wait half an hour in a lineup to get beers or get food. But that is something that they're going to have to address because the bottom line is it affects the Bombers' bottom line. But overall, listen, we knew there were going to be some hiccups. I will say this, Reem. I was quite impressed with how the entering the building went. I was there at a very busy time. The lines were long, but for the most part, the way the vax proof and ID happened earlier, then going in to do the ticket, it really only took us 5 or 10 minutes to get through. And I think a lot of people thought that if you were getting there at the height of the crowd, you'd be talking about 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and that really wasn't the case. The long lines wasn't to show your ID, your vax card. It was certainly to get food or beverage once you got into the stadium because everyone seemed to be ready to go and ready to spend money last night at IG Field.
Yeah, I had some friends who took out money to spend there and like, oh, I won't even take it. And I said, I'll just get to it. I said yesterday here, Huss, that the debit machines go quick. I guess when you're at the supermarket and you can scan it and it comes up with the price, you can pay for things quickly. Yeah. But when they have to punch in the price every time, yeah, that definitely takes a while. So like the paying part, I agree, took 2 seconds. But it's
and the other part of it is that there's no hawkers. I mean, usually, if you have that and you have the ability to have hawkers in the stands and in some other areas, it takes a lot of stress off of, some of those locations where people are going to get specific items. I have no doubt that it'll be improved for the next game and it'll probably be better after that. And they might need a few more people. They might need a few more places to sell some of these products we're discussing. But as I said, these are good problems to have for us, because the big problem that we've had for the last year and a half is there's been no damn CFL, no Blue Bomber football, and we've been waiting for this party to get going. So overall, I mean, what a night. All I can say. I mean, it was the night we were all waiting for, and the best part about it was that the home team came through and stepped up with another big-time win in impressive fashion. And to do that against a Hamilton Tiger Cat team that, let's not forget, came in as a pretty significant favorite. Shout out to everyone that jumped on that line as soon as it came out with the Bombers. We were getting it, I think, at plus 152 on Coolbet. It finished at around plus 110. So there was definitely some value on the Bombers. And I got to tell you, Remo, if you were wondering whether guys like Willie Jefferson and Adam Bighill were ready to go, we found out very quickly that the Blue Bomber defense is legit. We kind of joked earlier that the TSN turning point to the game may have been the 2-point convert after Hamilton's first touchdown, because that was about it for Hamilton when it came to really pressing the Bomber defense. It was just a masterful performance. And I'll tell you, a guy that got a lot of heat for a long time in this city that deserves a lot of credit right now is Richie Hall, because you're putting in a defensive secondary and D-backs that have not played in the Canadian Football League before against guys like Brandon Banks and Jeremiah Masoli. Those players stepped up. But it all started on the defensive line with the attack of Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat going at Jeremiah Masoli, keeping him on his toes throughout it. I mean, just a brilliant defensive performance to Richie Hall and the gang. And as you mentioned, I mean, as far as Zach Caleros goes, he was running around like Kyler Murray yesterday, and he got it done. And it was just nice to see them control the football. But the big story offensively, of course, was Brady Oliveira, Winnipeg kid coming in the spot vacated by Andrew Harris. And listen, the Bombers did not miss a beat. I mean, I got to tell you, Remo, for a young man to come in with that sort of pressure and spotlight on him, I don't think it could have gone any better for Brady Oliveira, unless he maybe got into the end zone and got to do maybe a little touchdown dance.
Yeah, that was the big question for fantasy players like myself. Who was getting the majority of the touches? This is what I look for. Was going to be Oliveira or Augustine? Were they going to split? And it was definitely Oliveira taking the load. Got off to a bit of a slow start. And then I think as the game went on and they had the lead and they're looking nice, that he was able to pick up steam and ended with a great 126, over 120 yards. So he seems to be like another Winnipeg guy. So that was great. In the defense, Willie Jefferson coming to the pick, getting the big fumble off Brandon Banks. I mean, this is a Hamilton offense that is supposed to be explosive, and the Bombers basically had a repeat of what we saw in the Grey Cup. So I think you got to be excited. I think the Bombers definitely favorites. I mean, I think Hamilton was Grey Cup favorites, but hey, the Bombers beat Hamilton. So, I mean, if you're looking for a repeat, things are looking... I know it's one game, but things are looking on track. They look like they picked up where they left off, basically.
Well, exactly. And you know what Ric Flair says? To be the man, you gotta beat the man. Woo! And right now, the Bombers are still the man in the Canadian Football League. So it's just a heck of a start. We're going to talk all about it with John Hodge from 3 Down Nation coming up in just a second. Before we do that, I want to shout out a couple of our sponsors, including our newest sponsor, Canadian Club. We saw a lot of CC being poured yesterday in between the Jim Beam Stillhouse and some of the other locations. And it was great to see the Beam Suntory crew. Let's face it, that North End last night was rocking from 6 p.m. right until the final gun at the end of the game. And that Jim Beam Stillhouse, the Brugal Rum Hut, was quite a spot that everyone was having some fun at. And of course, the great products. And it's great to see Canadian Club and the other products of Beam Suntory being such great sponsors, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And we are so excited to partner up with them throughout the season. To have some great contests. We'll have some great giveaways with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. So if you're getting ready for the weekend, we've kind of talked a lot about beer, but if you're looking to go a little different direction, maybe go and pick up a little CC, best in the biz since 1858. I saw a lot of folks that had popped into Royal Sports and grabbed, whether it was Blue Bomber championship gear or jerseys for the game last night, and I imagine those will continue. I did text Greg over at Royal and said, keep me up to date on championship shirts for our Canadian women's soccer team. I don't know if they could get enough stock for the amount of people that are going to want to pick up a commemorative thing for that Canadian great victory. But of course, on the weekend, if you're thinking about doing shopping, whether it's to get ready for hockey season on the ice or off with incredible licensed merchandise, or maybe the expanded fitness gear, still a lot of time to ride bikes. They've got a great selection there. It's all at Royal Sports, 650 Rally and EK and 750 Pembina Highway. And a shout out to T-Knot, Trevor Knott, and Knott AutoCorp. We had Milt on. Trevor's very excited about the Milt Stiegel version 2.0 commercial that's going to be coming out very soon. It was a pleasure to have Milt on the program with us yesterday. Knott's been a great longtime supporter of the Bombers. A number of the staff was out there. It was great to see them last night. And they're back to work today. So if you're thinking about getting a new ride, check them out. The incredible inventory they have, including a number of Teslas on the lot over at Waverly and McGillivray. You can find out more online at knot.ca. They'll service your vehicle as well, or maybe you need to make it look like new again. Talk to them about detailing. It's all there at knot.ca. Visit them at Waverly and McGillivray. All right, Sean Fitz-Gerald coming up a little later on. We'll talk more about the significance of the Canadian women's soccer win earlier today in Tokyo. But right now, let's talk some Blue Bomber football with John Hodge from 3 Down Nation. John, what's up? Thanks so much for doing this, and it's great to have you on the program. How are you?
I'm doing great, Hustler. The CFL's back, so you know that I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, it is back. We were all back. We'll get to the game in a second. But I know you wrote on this. This was, I mean, we've been talking about it for a very long time. Really from the moment that it seemed that the league was going to play this year. We circled August 5th on the calendar, Peg City, Grey Cup rematch, but it was so much more than a game. Give me your thoughts on just arriving to the stadium, seeing all those people, the banner raising. But before we actually got to the football, I think it was a win for the entire community.
It was, Huss. I mean, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in the CFL have been a huge part of my life for as long as I can remember. Lifelong Winnipegger. Parents, still season ticket holders, were my entire childhood. I grew up going to games, idolizing guys like Doug Brown, Milt Stiegel. I'm part of a generation of Winnipeggers too who didn't have a Jets. The Jets moved away when I was a little kid. The Bombers were my team, and the Bombers were the team of all of my friends growing up. They were our number one, and the number two team was a really distant second. So to come off of a year, right, where there was no CFL football. And I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but the reality with these XFL talks is there was a reasonable chance that the CFL wasn't going to return the way that it left in 2019. It was going to return looking very differently. And I would also suggest that had the 2021 season not happened, not gotten off, there's a chance it wouldn't have returned at all. And so going through an off season of turmoil, an off season of questions, an off season of uncomfortable conversations and doom and gloom, it felt incredible to be back in the building with 30,000 fully vaccinated people celebrating, the Grey Cup, celebrating the return of the CFL, celebrating just getting a chance to sit next to somebody you don't live with and you're not related to. It was one of the most amazing nights I think I've ever had, and it's not one I'll soon forget. I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, and of course, you guys were up in the press box. I was down in the seats, and I didn't realize there was one moment last night. It was after Kenny Lawler's touchdown, and we're whooping it up with the guys we're sitting with, and then turned around and started high-fiving strangers. I mean, that hasn't happened in a long, long time, and just simple acts like that sort of really did make, I think, everybody feel like hopefully we're through the worst of it and on to a much brighter day. And I'll tell you that, not to get down any sort of COVID rabbit holes, but I think it also shows the effectiveness of the vaccine. And I mean, I think of how bad of a spot that we were in as a community a few months ago to be where we are today. I think we should all have an incredible amount of gratitude to the doctors and scientists that have paved the way to allow us to get back to that. All that being said, John, the Bombers went out and did it again. Football, it can be very complicated, but it's also very simple. And if you dominate your opponent on the line of scrimmage, you're going to win 9 out of 10 times, maybe 19 out of 20 or 99 out of 100. It happened again last night. How impressed were you with just the physicality on the defensive side of the football, as well as the Bombers' O-line, paving the way for Brady Oliveira to have such an incredible debut as a starting running back?
Well, it was very impressive. And honestly, I was getting deja vu going back to the 2019 Grey Cup. Let's not forget the Ticats were heavily favored in that game. They'd only lost 3 games all season. They'd won 16, and I think their 3 losses were by a combined 13 points, if I'm remembering that correctly. And then, of course, the Bombers, won the game by 3 touchdowns. So last night was a little closer, but honestly, to watch the offensive line just improve as the game went on, because Brady Oliveira started slow in the first quarter. I think he only had 2 carries for something like 3 yards. But going into the third quarter, the fourth quarter, there was a stretch late in the game, and it was obvious the Bombers were trying to kill the clock, right? And to me, the ultimate sign of a great running game is when you can still run the ball, when the defense knows that the run is coming, right? There's no question about, is it going to be, play action? Are they going to pull the ball, run, pass out, whatever? No, they're giving the ball to their 225-pound running back. And there were 4 plays in a row in the fourth quarter where Brady Oliveira ran for 10 or more yards, which is ridiculous. When you're moving the football at will like that and generating first downs seemingly effortlessly, I think that's sensational. And when it comes to Oliveira, I mean, this is a guy, he's 225 pounds. Some running backs tend to be the nail. Brady Oliveira tries to be the hammer whenever possible. And he certainly did that last night. And it was obvious to me that Hamilton's defense simply was wearing down. I mean, let's be honest. It's not fun tackling a 225-pound running back who's got his head and shoulders lowered, looking to deliver the blow. No, and any football player will tell you that. Maybe off the record, but if they won't say it out loud, they're feeling it. It's not fun to do. And Oliveira, I mean, he was sensational at North Dakota. Even in the 4-down game there, he averaged 5.6 yards per carry, pushing the pile as a big-bodied, powerful back. So he obviously had a great game. Was fabulous to see. I mean, he was already a special night, but then to have a brand new Winnipegger in not his first career game, but almost his first career game, seeing as he barely played in 2019, suffering a broken ankle, having to go through surgery. For him to come out on that special night, where Winnipeggers are getting the chance to celebrate the banner and everything, to have him rush for over 100 yards and really seal that game in the fourth quarter was just the cherry on top of what was a great night for Bomber fans at IG Field.
It absolutely was. And I'll tell you what really stood out to me about Oliveira, because, like you, I mean, we knew what he had done as a college player. He was, a guy the Bombers really wanted. They targeted him in the draft. They picked him. And of course, he got knocked out early last season, but was still around the team. When he finally got a chance to play, you mentioned those first couple carries, there wasn't a lot going on. Second quarter, when he started getting a little bit more momentum, the thing that impressed me the most, it was when he was getting tackled, he would get hit, and he would always get an extra 2 or 3 yards just moving his body or continuing his forward momentum. And John, all that adds up and certainly helps you move the chains. And then, as you mentioned, the confidence started getting, he started getting more confidence, and the Bomber offensive line started to take over. And, in a lot of ways, I think it was maybe foreshadowing what was to come when the Bombers came out of that tunnel. And who was leading the way? 51 and 66. And the big guys up front, the anchors of that offensive line, they seemed to get better throughout the game. And, we saw just, I don't want to say a humiliation, but I mean, they kicked their ass on the line of scrimmage all night, and it got worse for Hamilton as the game went on. And I know Mike O'Shea doesn't show his emotions very often, but he, I'm sure, had a big smile in the coach's office after the game for the way that his unit continued to get better throughout the game.
Well, this I think is going to become, honestly, a storyline this season. I mean, we all know that Winnipeg's offensive line is excellent. I would argue it's the best in the CFL. I said that in 2019, and guess what? It's the same old line that they fielded through the Grey Cup run and the end of the regular season. That being said, looking around the offensive lines around the CFL, there have been a lot that have been ravaged by injury. The Riders play tonight. They are essentially starting their 4th and 5th string tackles because Taron Vaughn had surgery. Jacoby Caulfield retired. Cyrus Kawanjo retired. And all of a sudden, they're on guys 4 and 5. And that's not dissimilar to a lot of teams. Calgary starting a rookie. If you look at a guy like, in Edmonton, Colin Kelly is out. Derek Dennis didn't report. So there are a ton of guys who are missing league-wide, big bodies. Last night for Hamilton, Chris Van Zyl, arguably, I mean, he is the league's reigning most outstanding offensive lineman, probably the best pass blocker in the league, though I would imagine Stanley Bryant would have something to say about that. He didn't play. So the Bombers, the fact that it's the strength of their team really is that offensive line, and they're healthy, really, I think sets them head and shoulders above everybody else, because everybody else in this league is dealing with an injury or a retirement somewhere. We saw it last night. Hamilton, that was 80% of their starting offensive line. Van Zyl was out, and they had Kay Okafor at right tackle in his second career start. But that's 80% of their starting unit. And the Bombers' defensive front seven chewed it up, right? So if the Bombers are in a position where they can say, hey, Hamilton's got a really good defensive line. Granted, Taylor Ron didn't play, but it's a very good defensive line. And look, we did a great job opening holes for Brady. We did a fantastic job protecting Zach. I think that's a really exciting thing for the Blue Bombers, because it's a position of strength that honestly not many teams in this league have right now.
Well, just before we move to the defensive side of the football, I want to ask you about Collaros. His mobility was really impressive. And, for many of us, myself included, it was the first time we got a chance to see Zach Collaros play in Winnipeg, because, of course, the game that he started, his first start against Calgary, was that final game of the regular season, was also the weekend that the Jets and Calgary were playing in Regina. So, I remember watching that with a ton of Bomber fans that were all there for the hockey game on television. And we all remember the play to Darvin Adams that made people thinking, like, holy smokes. And not to mention when he got smoked in that game and everyone thought, oh my God, here we go again, and got up and ended up winning it. So it was kind of cool for Zach Collaros, who is still yet to lose in a Bomber jersey, to do what he did. But man, some of the scrambling that he made, and probably a couple throws that he would like to have back after he created a bunch of time. But it's just such a different style of quarterback that we've seen in the past. And I think that bodes very well for a Bomber offense that without a Chris Streveler won't be able to, despite how good the running game was last night. I don't think that can run or can rely on it as much as they did in 2019 on the way to that Grey Cup.
Yeah, let's be honest. Matt Nichols did a fantastic job in Winnipeg of protecting the football, right? Which is why he got that game manager, moniker or tag attached to him, because, he'd go out there and he'd throw for 220 yards, but no interceptions, which is great. But the issue is he can't move the ball with his feet terribly well, at least not at this point of his career. I wouldn't call him a sitting duck in the pocket, but not that mobile, not that elusive. Chris Streveler is maybe the most mobile and elusive quarterback to play in the CFL in the last 20 years. The downside is he could not protect the football. He threw a lot of interceptions, particularly during his string of starts in the middle of 2019. Zach Collaros brings both, right? He brings the mobility. He's able to buy time with his feet. He didn't take off and run that much last night, but frankly, I don't think this team is interested in having him take off and run that much. But what he does do well, right, is buy time behind the line of scrimmage, because when the offensive line gives him a ton of time, and then occasionally, right, he can generate more, create space for himself, create time for himself. We saw him really extend some plays last night. You mentioned there were a couple plays he extended that missed on, but there were a couple plays he extended that hit on. And, when you've got dominance along the offensive line, right, people manhandling the front of the opposing defense, and then you can add in that special element, which is, hey, by the way, now we're going to throw the playbook out because we're 4 Mississippis into this play. Things have broken down, and I'm just going to go to the schoolyard, right, and run back and forth, make guys miss. And, oh, look, there happens to be Nick Dembski 8 yards down the field, and nobody's within 12 yards of him, right? And he's going to go up the sideline for 49. All of a sudden, that adds a brand new dimension that, again, wasn't necessarily there with Matt Nichols or Chris Streveler. No disrespect to those two guys. I just think Collaros does a good job of kind of marrying their respective strengths in terms of protecting the football and also generating, right, some time, some plays with his legs. So, yes, he was very good. And you're right. There's a reason he's 5-0, right, as the starter of Winnipeg Blue Bombers. He won at home against Calgary last year late in the season. He led the team to the 3 postseason victories, and now he's 1-0 as the starter. And if I had to place some bets right now, which I probably will later today, I think he's going to be 6-0 to start off his tenure as the starting QB.
I like it, of course. Back-to-back with the Argos coming up over the next couple of weeks, which will be interesting. We'll get a chance to see Toronto for the first time taking on the Calgary Stampeders this weekend. Going in, and really throughout camp, John, the big question was the defensive secondary. New players, unfamiliar players coming in, guys that hadn't been in with CFL experience before for the most part going in. And, there may be some nervous moments when the Ticats went down and put it in for 6 on the first drive, but holy smokes, did they step up. And we gave a lot of credit to the guys up front, and they certainly do deserve it. But you got some game balls for the new guys in the defensive backfield?
Well, they had a great game. I mean, and let's also remember, there was an extra test last night when Josh Johnson went down early in the first quarter and didn't return. I mean, Josh Johnson was already playing out of position. He was brought in to Winnipeg to take over one of those 2 spots in the secondary vacated by Winston Rose and Marcus Sales after 2019. Well, Mercy Maston goes down in camp, tears his Achilles. So Josh Johnson moves to strong side linebacker. And now you've got 2 rookie starters on the boundary. You got Dietrich Nichols and you got DeAndre Alford. And Alford got beaten for that early touchdown pass to Jalen Acklin. He got beaten as well for a 37-yard gain in the second quarter. But honestly, both plays, particularly the touchdown, if you go back and watch it, the coverage is excellent. Jalen Acklin just makes an unbelievable play. The ball's in the perfect spot. If it was an inch shorter, it probably gets batted down. So, the offense gets paid too. No DB is perfect. But that said, in the entire second quarter, and I mean, granted too, the pressure had a lot to do, I think, with disrupting what the Ticats were trying to do on offense. But when you look at it and you go, okay, so Dietrich Nichols at half in his first CFL game, I think gave up 2 receptions to Jalen Marshall for something like 17 yards. Dietrich Nichols got beat for 2 long ones and then settled down. Let's also remember, they're playing the boundary side. That means it's the short side of the field. Most teams play their best receivers to that side. Hamilton's a little different because Brandon Banks actually plays the field side, the wide side of the field. But to have 2 raw rookies back there playing that well without a veteran like Josh Johnson on the field, because then what happens is Brandon Alexander, the safety, right, who's kind of running everything and is in charge of getting guys to play that and fill their assignments properly, he goes down to Sam to fill Josh Johnson's spot, and Noah Hallett comes in as safety. Well, Noah Hallett's never played the CFL. He was a second-round pick out of McMaster in 2020. He's in his first career game. So now you're in a position where, okay, we've got 6 secondary spots. We got 3 guys making their first CFL appearance ever, and you're going up a former East Division MOP, Brandon Banks, Jalen Acklin, and all these stars on the Ticats. So to hold the Ticats under 250 yards receiving, to have Dietrich Nichols be outstanding, to have DeAndre Alford play very well, albeit with the 2 receptions. Willie Jefferson spoke very highly of them, and Jontrell Rockamore as well, who deserves a mention. He's in for the injured Kyrie Wilson at will linebacker. He made a couple big tackles, and he made the game-sealing interception. Like, when it comes to good football teams in any league, but especially the CFL, you got to reload, right? The rosters aren't very big. You have to, when an injury happens, have a guy to step up and preferably have him be young. And the Bombers definitely succeeded in that on defense last night, because that defense looked exactly like it did in 2019. And that's minus 2 all-stars, right, in Sales and Rose. So full credit to those young guys.
Absolutely. John Hodge is with us from 3 Down Nation here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Other question I think a lot of people had was certainly the kicking game, and it was interesting. I think Mike O'Shea still has some questions about the kicking game based on some of the decisions that he made in the game. But overall, how would you assess the Bombers' special teams last night?
I thought Mark Leggio, the rookie, did a really nice job punting the football. His gross punting was not great, but I've talked to a number of specialists in the CFL, and honestly, they say, gross punting is a meaningless stat. Net punting is what matters. How much are you actually advancing the football down the field when the opposing offense comes on? And his directional, I think almost every one of his punts landed between the yard line or the number and the sideline. A number that went out of bounds, but also remember the CFL, you're not allowed, like the NFL, to just punt out of bounds willy-nilly. You have to do it within, I think it's 20 to 25 yards of the end zone. And he did that successfully, routinely. The kicking game, like Tyler Crapina, he doesn't do kickoffs and he doesn't punt. That's Legio. Crapina is a journeyman. He's been around a bunch of places, originally out of McMaster. I think this is his 5th team in something like 6 years. And yeah, the Bombers had a chance to end the first quarter to kick a 51-yard field goal. They didn't do it. They had a chance in the third quarter to kick a 45-yard field goal. They didn't do it. And the wind was really not a factor. I was sitting in the press box with a perfect eyesight line at the flags at the top of the uprights. The wind wasn't a factor. If anything, it would have actually been at his back a little bit for the 51-yarder. So O'Shea talked about it after the game to the media, and he was just honest. He said, hey, Brandon Banks is back there. He had 2 missed field goal return touchdowns in 2019. And when you're kicking a field goal, particularly a long one, you probably got 6 linemen out there, plus your kicker. So if you've got, right, 7 of your 12 guys on the field, no disrespect to the kicker and the lineman, but guys who don't get paid to tackle players like Brandon Banks, and you've got one of the greatest returners in CFL history back there, O'Shea just said, honestly, at that point, I'm very much prepared to just say, you know what? Let's trust our defense to get the ball back. And Mark Legio did his job punting out of bounds, burying the Ticats deep, and the defense did a great job of getting the ball back. So it's hard to criticize that. But I will say, I do think the Bombers miss Justin Medlock for obvious reasons. He's one of the greatest kickers in CFL history for a reason. And that is something to keep in mind, because the game didn't call for the Bombers to try those field goals yesterday. But if, let's say, in week 2, it's fourth quarter and the Bombers are down 2 points with 3 minutes to play, you're damn sure they're going to want to kick that 51-yard field goal or that 45-yard field goal. So certainly something to keep an eye on. I don't know what Tyler Capina's range is, but obviously Osh wasn't super comfortable with the 51-yarder last night or the 45-yarder. So I'm interested to see what is the range, and can Crapina win the confidence of this coaching staff?
John Hodge is our guest. Give him a follow on Twitter at John D. Hodge. And if you're not already following and checking out on the daily 3 Down Nation, what are you waiting for? John, I just have to commend you. I mean, Justin Dunk's been doing great work for a long time. Seeing how you have grown into this role and making such great content for CFL fans has just been phenomenal for those of us that eat it up. If people just give a quick plug for 3 Down Nation for people that haven't seen the site, and fill us in on what you guys got coming up on the weekend into next week, coming out of the first week of CFL football.
Yeah, 3 Down Nation, we are I'd like to think the number 1 CFL news publication out there. We cover the CFL as much as anybody. We also have some content surrounding youth sports, Canadian junior football, and we follow former CFL players and Canadian players in the NFL as well. We got the podcast, we got video, we got socials, we got everything you want. So I appreciate the kind words, Sus. We're obviously a huge fan of you and your show as well. Yeah, follow me on Twitter. Check me out on 3 Down. We got, I think yesterday we published 18 articles about the CFL and its return. So if you don't like one article, we hope you like the other 17.
Johnny, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for doing this. And I certainly hope we can do this often throughout the season. People have been loving it, and it's exciting for a lot of people around here to talk about the Blue Bombers, but overall, the Canadian Football League is just so great to have the 3 Down game back.
Absolutely. And Huss, anytime you want me on this show, I'll be here.
Excellent. Well, we'll hopefully let's do something next week heading into week number 2. John, thanks so much. Looking forward to what you and JD have cooking at 3 Down Nation this week and into next.
Appreciate it, boss. Anytime, Huss.
Right on. There he is, John Hodge. That was awesome. Great to have him on the program again. Tonight, it is the Riders and Lions kicking off in a sold-out Mosaic Field, and tomorrow, CFL doubleheader. Calgary in Calgary and in Edmonton. All right, we're going to get to the Olympics coming up right away with Sean Fitz-Gerald. Really looking forward to that. Just before we do that, want to give a big shout out to Paramount Services Limited and Carrie O'Brien, who I actually traveled home from the game with last night. We were there, seeing a lot of happy Bomber fans coming out, so it was great to see KO. And known Carrie for a long time, a great friend of the program. And of course, with Paramount Services Limited, which is a full facility maintenance company that serves commercial HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and handyman services to probably most of your favorite convenience stores and restaurants here in the city and in Manitoba and across Western Canada. If you're in that business and if you have any needs, you definitely should give them a call. You can ask for Carrie or go to their website at ParamountServicesLTD.com. And as I mentioned before, they're also always looking, especially right now, for people with any experience when it comes to HVAC, plumbing, electrical, and handiwork. And if you do that, kick onto the careers section or the link on our sponsor page at winnipegsports.com and find out more. Big thanks to Paramount Services Limited. Hit them online at ParamountServicesLimited.com. I know there was a few people that hit the Boston Pizza before and definitely some happy Bomber fans that were there afterwards. The summer menu is here and people are back at BP. When you're there, check out the Burger Italiano and the Honeydill Fried Chicken Sandwich. And I'm sure those Bulldog Margarita fish bowls and white sangria smashes were tasting a little bit better for Bomber fans after that big win. Make it Boston Pizza tonight at any of the local locations here in Manitoba in and around the province. And I think we saw Nick in the house. There could very well be some championship Canadian DQ cakes being made. Check out our friends Nick and Nikki. 4 DQs in the city and province: DQ Niverville, Northgate, Polo Park, and St. Anne's. Victory blizzards for everyone. And as we mentioned, if now that gatherings are allowed again and people are getting together, be the hero at the next time you get together with folks. Bring one of those DQ cakes. You can hit them up online on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. They'll get it all set up for you ready. You can just pop by one of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQs to pick up. All right, let's talk about our Canadian Golden Girls and everything going on at the Tokyo Olympics. An absolute pleasure to welcome in from the Athletics, Sean Fitz-Gerald, to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Sean, what's going on? Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
The entire Olympics has been so much fun, and it was a weird Olympics. And I know there was a lot of people that said it should be canceled. And listen, they've minimized any sort of dangers without fans there. But I got to tell you, with some of these performances we've seen from our Canadian athletes, you just wonder what would have happened, what we would have been deprived of. We have to start it off with this win today. Canada beats Sweden in a thrilling penalty shootout to win a gold medal. At the start, we were talking with folks that were in on the chat. I'm wondering, and it'll probably take us some time for perspective on this, Sean, but where this ranks amongst the greatest victories in Canadian sports history, not soccer history, but all sports, certainly from a team perspective.
Yeah, no, this is a team that, it's been building for 2 generations. I think you can probably trace it back. Obviously, has roots in the prairies in the mid 80s when the program actually physically started. Like we like to think it started, back when I was a kid in the 70s or in the black and white era of the original 6, but no, it didn't start until about 1986. But I think it really started hitting its stride, maybe not coincidentally, when Christine Sinclair arrived. And really, 2002 World Championship in Edmonton. And then you can see the incremental steps forward. But yeah, for a long time, this was Christine Sinclair and team, right? Like this was Christine Sinclair, somebody who played with, that Canadian grit and determination, but on top of that, otherworldly skill for years and years and years. So, you build into what might be and what has been billed as, the greatest game of all time, which is the 2012 Olympic semifinal between Canada and the US, when Christine Sinclair had a hat trick against one of the most powerful teams that's ever walked the face of the earth, and then ends up getting robbed and they lose 4-3. This was a vengeance game. And this was, that win against the US in the semis here. And then today was sort of a vindication of a career's worth of work, of a multi-generational growth plan, of a team that has been on the cusp and is now Olympic champion. I think that what this could be monumental. We could look back at this as, where the real push for women's league started domestically in Canada. We could look back, as we're looking back now, as, this is a moment where, a generation of Canadian children were inspired to do something. And we've already seen it here that, there are women on this team who were inspired by what happened in 2012. So, a decade from now, imagine what we're talking about.
No, I Could not agree more. I mean, I think the ripple effect of this victory will be felt for years and potentially decades. Hopefully it will be. I mean, because it's all positive, and as we see the forward momentum.
I had two tiny idiot children screaming around in my basement at 9 o'clock Eastern time this morning, screaming. One's a 10-year-old boy, one's a 6-year-old girl. I mean, it sounded like a prison riot downstairs. Like, they will remember this. And, they're both in youth soccer. So, assuming the youth soccer system maybe improves a little bit, which is a whole other discussion. I think there's going to be kids in basements across Canada who watched the game this morning who are taking real meaningful memories away from this.
Well, and I'll give the United States a lot of credit. I mean, first of all, for their women's program, the way they built a true superpower in women's soccer and set the bar for countries like Canada, knowing that you need to be that good if you even want to be in the conversation. When they won their last World Cup, the star power of the team continued to grow, as it should have. And they did some incredible celebrations. I mean, they did the ticker tape parade in Manhattan, but they literally did a celebration tour of the United States to a bunch of the soccer hotbeds where those women were celebrated as they should be for being world champs in a number of spots. How amazing would that be if this team could come back and basically take a couple of weeks and start on the West Coast and do something in Vancouver and Calgary and Regina and Winnipeg? I really do think, and I have no idea whether that's planned, whether they've even thought about something, but this is such a special group of women and a team that I think is connected with the Canadian populace on such a special way. Having this achievement, I think the benefits of doing something like that, not only to give these women the respect and the celebration that they deserve here on home soil, but also you talked about the experience that your kids had watching the game. That will be another thing. These great celebrations obviously will have to be outdoors when it can be safe, but to have those moments that continue to inspire young players to, want to not only do what they did on the field, but, be part of a championship celebration that comes with the biggest wins in sports.
Yeah, I mean, in a much sort of a lower key, several players did do a sort of a victory celebration after 2012 when they came home with the bronze. That there were athletes who would hold, not public events in terms of a rally, but they'd connect with the provincial federation or the local soccer federations and hold like a weekend clinic. They were in Halifax. I believe they stopped in Edmonton. They had a couple stops in Ontario, and I think they made it all the way out to BC. But I remember, story in Halifax. I wrote the story of, people using connections to get their granddaughters into this sort of space with these bronze medal winners. Like 200 slots open for a weekend skills clinic with Canadian Olympians, and people were basically trying to bribe officials to get them in. Like they had that tour, and it was massive. I do think that, it's sort of a victim of timing here that, we're sitting here talking about the Delta variant. Obviously a really nice thing to see the Bombers on TV in front of a pretty full house last night. I don't think local governments are going to be in a position to say, hey, let's get together and rally and celebrate. Certainly not across Canada, because I think, in Ontario, the numbers ticked up again today. I don't think that's going to be possible, but that's not to discount the potential of what this moment has at all.
At some point, I hope that these women get that sort of celebration that they deserve, because you can tell that the country is back, is totally behind them. Back to Sinclair, and I'm going to put Winnipeg's Desiree Scott in this conversation as well, because they are the two holdovers from that 2012 team that was robbed against the Americans. Des, and you mentioned kind of those sort of celebrations. She was, welcomed back as a hero in 2012 and has made such an impact on the community here, partly because of just the person that she is, but especially at the grassroots level. I've got a niece that has been playing, but was, very small at that point. And, that was the idol for young girls playing soccer, and she's done that. But for me to see Christine Sinclair put that gold medal on Desiree Scott and then have Christine get it. The focus, of course, is on Sinclair. She's the highest scoring player of any sex ever in international competition. But to have this girl from Winnipeg who played at the University of Manitoba, a very different path to this sort of prominence and notoriety, to be here for a third Olympics and a third medal and now a gold medal. These two women in particular, the backbone of this program, dating back to the John Herdman years, right now to the greatest win in Canadian soccer history.
Yeah, and I think the really interesting thing now, as you mentioned, the next wave, the people that they're inspiring. It's an interesting challenge, and I'm not going to ramble on too much about this, but this does mean a lot to me, and I don't think we really have a meaningful discussion about it on a national level. Let's take a look back at 2019 with the Toronto Raptors. Obviously, they had a huge victory then, and the talk was, think of all of the people that they're inspiring. The challenge is that Canada basketball didn't and doesn't have the infrastructure to sort of accept that wave of folks in. Like, it's not like hockey. Like, for all of the things that we dump on hockey, and there's a lot to crap on hockey about, their grassroots registration system is without peer in Canada. That, if you've signed your child up for hockey, Hockey Canada will know what team they played for last year, who coached them, what level. For the coaches, they'll know what level of certification you have. They'll know where you've coached. They've known with who you've coached. And they will have benchmarks of elements that you will need to qualify as a volunteer coach. That doesn't exist in soccer right now. It doesn't exist in basketball. So basketball, had this wave of interest. There weren't house leagues necessarily that had the capacity to welcome in all the kids who had interest. So I think soccer, and it's been getting a bit of a pass now because of the success, but soccer starts with more kids in its grassroots than hockey does, by quite a large margin. There are more kids in Canada who play soccer than hockey, who play soccer more than basketball, any other sport. And yet here we are, certainly on the men's side, middling to worse. And on the women's side, we've finally gotten up over this hill. But soccer needs to improve its infrastructure. It needs to develop better coaching principles, needs to teach better. You shouldn't just be able to show up and just open a bag of soccer balls, throw them on the field, and just have your house league kids run around. There should be some minimum coaching requirements, and that's a start. And it should also have a better tracking system, talent identification, all of these things, so that when you get 800,000 kids playing soccer, you have an idea of who's really into the game, who's good, and start fostering that love of the game through good coaching, through value-added coaching, and help them up on a ladder so that some of those 800,000 kids might go and become the next Christine Sinclair, or the next Desiree Scott, or the next Jessie Fleming, or hopefully the next Steph LeBay, because right now it's just not good enough.
Well, Sean, based on all of that you just said, which is absolutely accurate, how are we sitting here talking about an Olympic gold medal right now?
Because Christine Sinclair and the golden generation that she was a part of defied gravity. Like, it was a shambles for a long time, and it was Christine Sinclair against the world. It was, hoof it up, try and plow through some people, and hopefully Christine Sinclair scores on the other end. Part of this is numbers. That, yeah, you have 800,000 kids. You're going to get a few who go through and emerge. But what are the barriers to entry? Do we have athletes who aren't being identified, who aren't being coached properly at the very beginning, who are being funneled out of the system because it costs too much to play rep? All of these things need to be identified, because imagine the power that Canada could wield if we start actually harnessing our raw resources properly at the very beginning.
Sean Fitz-Gerald's with us from The Athletic, discussing the Tokyo Olympics and Canada's incredible gold medal win today in women's soccer. The Olympics up until the last few days has really been all about the women, with women's victories. The men sort of started stepping up, especially on the track. Let's talk about Andre DeGrasse. I mean, gold medalist in the 200, got on the podium in the 100, and now with an incredible anchor leg, gets another medal for Canada. Usain Bolt sort of sucked up all the oxygen of the sprinting community for his time. How significant is what Andre DeGrasse has done? And, in a sport that has had some incredible Canadian sprinters, how will we remember, how should we remember Andre DeGrasse and his performance in Tokyo?
Yeah, I mean, he did what no Canadian male had done in 93 years when he won the 200 meter, helping run that anchor leg where, he picked up that baton in fifth and then steam passed and helped Canada finish bronze. He is one of the greatest sprinters in Canadian history. Donovan Bailey was quoted in a piece in The Athletic today saying that, he'll end up obviously as the most decorated track athlete. Not obviously, he'll end up as the most decorated track athlete in Canadian history. But Donovan Bailey said, but I'm still the best. because he won it with the Olympic record, with the world record. Certainly that 9.84 in 1996, nobody's going to forget anytime soon. But I think what Andre DeGrasse has done is just incredible. I mean, that 200-meter race, and certainly, finishing the way he did in the 100-meter race, coming through the injuries that he had to get here, the real questions. I think what he'll be remembered as is a star. And there's several stars. I mean, Canada produces several stars out of every Olympics, that ones you'll remember forever, whether it was Elizabeth Manley in 1988 or Daniel Negreanu in 2000 or Simon Whitfield or Cindy Klassen, Clara Hughes. I think we're going to be talking for years and years and years about the Canadian women's soccer team, about Jessie Fleming, Christine Sinclair, Steph Labbe, Penny Alexiak, Kelly Massey, Margaret McNeil, Andre DeGrasse. Evan Dunphy. Like, so many folks have come and done remarkable things in arguably the most challenging period of time, where you've had to go an extra year of training. I mean, you weren't sure 3 months before the opening ceremony whether there was going to be an opening ceremony. Like that's overcoming adversity.
No, there's no doubt about it. And in the midst of all the excitement about the Canadian women winning and what happened on the track with the 4x1, I am still mentally and physically exhausted just from watching the 5,000 meters. The final kick of Mohamed to win a silver medal, first time any Canadian's been on the podium in this event in the history of the Olympic Games, was a performance that I'll certainly remember from watching it. A guy that, I'll be honest, like many of the Olympic athletes, did not know anything about before we turned it on and watched his race. What an incredible moment for Ahmed today on the track.
I mean, we haven't even talked about Damian Warner either, right? Like winning the decathlon over 2 days. I mean, he talked about, they had to be there for 12 hours a day for 2 days in a row, getting 6 hours of sleep while competing in 10 events. And he put up numbers that would have qualified him for finals in the event straight up, like the 100-meter sprint, the hurdles. And he also, you talk about conditions and adversity. He talked about how when he bent down on his knee to like tie his shoe, the track was so hot, he actually burned his knee. That when he went to grab the pole for pole job, like it burned his hand. He had to go around wearing a cooling vest. Like it was 45 degrees, 47 degrees with humidity, which is about, competing in 10 events in the middle of an active volcano. Like it's just incredible what all of these athletes have done, especially, in these circumstances, not just the existential ones about the pandemic, but, competing in a games in August in Japan when it's super stinking hot.
Just on Warner, the decathlon's a weird event because we refer to it as it's the greatest athlete, but most of these guys sort of end up in the decathlon because they might not be truly world-class gold medal ready in any individual event. All that being said, we remember Mike Smith of Kenora, who was a big national hero for what he did. The significance of a gold medal in the decathlon in the Olympics. I'm not sure whether the Canadian populace, there's sometimes medals that, get more attention than others. But, when we look back down the road, how will we remember Warner and what he was able to do with all those conditions that you just mentioned?
Yeah, the first half of the games was about Penny and the swim team, right? Obviously. The work that they did in the pool was incredible. And then Andre DeGrasse comes, and those are the marquee events. And then the huge narrative with the women's soccer team, which can't be denied. But yeah, what Damian Warner did, what Damian Warner did over those 2 days is incredible. And not only that he won, but he put up 9,000 points for the first time in his career. And not many folks have done that at the Olympic level or any level, really. So what he did is just remarkable. And I do hope that, as time passes and as sort of the chaos of being in here now and celebrating all of these medals as they come in, that, generally we do look back and that this is one of those ones that, when you're talking about the Mount Rushmore of the Tokyo Games, to mix my metaphors, I guess, that he's certainly included among them.
Sean, overall, how would you assess the entire Olympic experience? We know the incredible challenges they've had, and I feel horrible for the Japanese people, not really being able to seemingly participate in a party that they are hosting. But I was adamant. I think these athletes have worked so hard. They deserved, if they wanted to, the opportunity to compete. Now that we're sort of well into the games, looking at how things have gone, how would you assess the challenges and how things have been handled to put on this show that we've been talking about for 2 weeks?
Every Olympics begins with, oh my God, this is going to be disastrous. Remember Greece, they weren't going to get them finished in time. Rio, was it going to be safe? In Russia, on a more serious note, there was some significant terrorist concerns. Vancouver didn't have snow. All of these things come up. And in the end, as lots of people have said, it's the Olympians that save the Olympics. Everything around it's terrible. The politics, the money involved, it's just awful. But it's when you get to see the kids out there competing. And the stands emptied, it's kind of off-putting, and it's awful that, for the billions and billions of dollars that Tokyo is going to end up paying for this, that they weren't able to celebrate. And it's awful for the athletes that, your support system, your family, you're not able to celebrate with this. You can't go back to Canada House after winning a gold medal and see your mom and dad and your partner and go and have fun and celebrate and share the moment with the people who helped get you there, who drove you to those early practices, who supported you when you were injured, maybe even financially supported you for training. But all that being said, I think that, the games have gone off. Here we are entering the final weekend. And in the middle of a global pandemic, when numbers are very concerning in Tokyo and in Japan right now, when, numbers have, infections have reached inside the athletes' village, inside that hopeful bubble, we're still here. And it's still sort of almost reached its conclusion. And I think from a Canadian perspective, from you and I sitting back here on this side of the Pacific, honestly, I think we've been spoiled by what the CBC's offered. The CBC on linear television, on its digital offerings, its streaming, has been so far superior to what they get just south of us in the United States. It really is obscene. For just as a quick aside, I had to watch NBC's coverage, primetime coverage, for one night, these Olympics. It was for work. So I was literally being paid to watch NBC. It was awful. It was unspeakably awful. I watched for 3.5 hours. I saw a beach volleyball match live, which was great. And then I saw a few heats of a 200 meter, and I saw, I think, a final of a hurdle in 3.5 hours, and that was it. The rest of it was prepackaged. It was tape delayed by 16 hours or so, and they only showed the Americans. Like, I remember they showed a highlight of the long jump competition, and they only showed the American, who was in 7th. The CBC will show you events that don't feature Canadians at all, and they'll give you a good and thorough background story, and they'll make sure you're educated about it, and they'll show you tons of stuff live. So, when we're talking about the Olympic experience, as you asked, I think the Canadian television viewer has been spoiled by what the CBC's offered this summer.
I couldn't agree. I could not agree more with you. And as a big golf guy who sweated out the entire golf and talking to a lot of people within the golf community, the difference between what we were able to see, with which arguably the best broadcast period, for world-class golf, for someone that watches every tournament, it wasn't even close. And the Americans almost couldn't watch any of it, period. It wasn't available, which is pretty incredible. And Xander Schauffele goes and wins a gold medal for her. Oh, let's go to the 18th hole for the final putt. It was a bit of a nightmare for some fans, but you are right. We are lucky. Sean, one more for you, and thanks so much for doing this. As we go into the final weekend of the Tokyo Games, we've spoken about some incredible Canadian victories. Overall, how successful was this for Team Canada? Did they exceed expectations going in, or should we start expecting these sort of performances from it? Did we overachieve this year?
It's a really interesting question. And again, we could keep talking. It's 2:15. We could go till about 4:00 talking about this, because now you're talking about philosophy, right? Before the Vancouver Games, Canada's funding model was, here's $10, spread amongst yourselves equally. We're going to pay for everybody to go and compete to that sort of amateur ideal of, competition and sport is in of itself the end goal, right? Competition, amateurism, that's what we're going to do. And if we win a couple medals, super. The old joke was that 4th place was Canadian bronze. Vancouver and, the emergence of things like Own the Podium, B210, which is a private fundraising group, RBC Training Ground, all of these things that you've been watching on TV. It changed the way that we approach sports as Canadians. I really do fundamentally believe that we went from just happy to be there. Yeah, sure, we'll host an Olympics in 1976 and not win a gold medal, no problem. And in 1988, hey, if we can get on the podium, that'd be great. To now, yeah, there's an expectation to win. And these athletes, still aren't making a ton of money, but, hopefully if they need that new boat for the canoe, if they need a new kayak, if they need an extra physio for decathlon, hopefully they're getting that now. And what that does is put them in a better position to win. So, within that, I think that, you look at the medal totals from here to Rio, and it's, Canada's potentially on the verge with a big weekend to pass that. The measuring up to expectations is tough because I don't know that anybody had any reasonable expectations heading into this, because it was the extra year of training that, some athletes from other countries, who were 13 years old when this thing was supposed to happen, were 14 years old and wanted diving at the platform. Things changed. And I think that, when you put in the pandemic and the uncertainty, I think it was tough to ascribe any kind of expectation. But I mean, certainly you look at the individual performances and the people who were really carrying this thing on their shoulders. I think everybody met expectations. You look at Penny Alexiak, Andre DeGrasse. I mean, certainly now we're talking about the women's soccer team, and even folks who ended up putting up personal bests. Pierre Lepage in the decathlon, certainly Connie Massey, Margaret McNeil. I think people who were expected to perform well, generally, by and large, met and or exceeded those expectations.
Hey, I just thought this. I've got to ask you on the way out. Cindy Clausen, of course, is from Winnipeg, one of the greatest Olympians in Canadian history, was famously shy, would meet the media and, would do all of her duties, but just wasn't comfortable, was not that outgoing. And, almost incredibly, after she finished winning all those medals, sort of was able to retreat into relative anonymity. I believe she's living in Calgary and, has a regular job right now. And that is her life. I see some similarities between Cindy Clausen and Christine Sinclair in that, they are these incredible world-class athletes. I mean, the greatest at what they were doing at a particular time. And in some ways, famously shy. I mean, the girls on the team that are, it's so funny. Des is such a foil to Sinclair in some ways because she's so outgoing and she has so much energy. But as far as Sinclair, she's, getting on. I'm not sure whether she has another Olympics. I'm not sure how much longer she's going to be playing. But where do you think Christine Sinclair is in 10 years? As far as, will she still be a huge figure in soccer? She'll be a huge figure in soccer history. But, do you see her still being involved with the game, with the national team program? Does she go into coaching? Is she media? Or does she go the route of Cindy Clausen? And we'll always talk about Christine Sinclair, but we won't really see or hear from her much.
I sure hope she's still involved. I know I'm supposed to be impartial, but I've followed her career for a long time. I was there in Guadalajara when she scored to help them win gold in the Pan American Games. I was in London when they were robbed by a really shaky official. I think it might be different in that it's a team sport, right? Soccer is more of a team sport. And you take a look, you go back and you watch that medal ceremony, or even you watch the moments after, that last penalty goes in, and you see the reaction. Like, she's right in there, and people seek her out and embrace her. That she was the heartbeat of that team still. Like, she had been the institutional memory. She was the one of two active players left from 2012. She is, from all accounts, universally beloved within that franchise, the women's soccer franchise. I think it would be a huge loss on so many levels if Canadian soccer didn't do everything in its power and beyond to find not just a role, but a meaningful role. So it doesn't have to be head coach. It could be assistant. It could be quality control. It could be consultant. It could be anything to keep that woman involved in soccer at the very highest levels. Because what she's done, what she means, the way she interacts, what she can offer in terms of coaching, guidance, advice, anything, we just don't have, because it doesn't exist. Maybe in the world there's a handful of players who can, say that they're at the level that she was at. And you talk to Karina LeBlanc, you speak with Diana Matheson, people that she played with, like, she's quiet when she's talking to you and me. And, it's funny that, the commercial that she's on with RBC, it's a non-speaking role. But behind closed doors, inside that team, I don't think that she can be said that, she shies away from anything. She is very much a leader.
Hey, speaking of being leaders, it was just so cool for us here in Winnipeg to see in the last 2 games, Christine Sinclair getting subbed out, putting the captain's R-band on Des Scott. Those 2 players, at some point, they won't be playing on that national team anymore. Is there a logical or obvious successor to those 2? As do we know who the next captain of this Canadian women's team will be, and at whatever point that happens?
I'm not as familiar with the internal dynamics of the team as many others who might have a better answer. You take a look and, the goalkeeper, this is her last Olympics too, right? So, do you go to, the other hero of this games? Is it a Jessie Fleming, whom, Sinclair famously passed the ball for that penalty, right, against the United States? The beautiful thing is that, there's more than one option. It wasn't that long ago where it's like, well, yeah, it's Christine Sinclair and she's got a strong supporting cast, but there's one global star. Here, there's lots of kids who, on this team at least, are going to be helping this team for a while.
Sean, this has been such a great conversation and just such a great day. Pretty fun to have just the opportunity to talk about a victory of this magnitude for our Canadian Olympic team and the Canadian women's soccer team. I've loved your Olympic coverage in The Athletic and everything that the folks at The Athletic do. We really appreciate you joining us. Have an awesome weekend. Enjoy the last couple of days at Tokyo.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be on anytime.
Appreciate it. There he is, Sean Fitz-Gerald. You can give him a follow on Twitter at Sean Fitz_Gerald. And if you're not already, as we always say this when we have Murad on, if you're not already an Athletic subscriber, what the hell are you waiting for? It's certainly worth it, especially at times like this. We love what they do covering our local teams, but I'll tell you what, there's just so much great content, and Sean's a perfect example of that. We've got more to get to. Some pretty significant NHL contract news, which we'll get to with Remis in just a second. I want to shout out our friends at Little Brown Jug. Guess what? The weekend is here. I have a feeling, certainly from looking at some of the folks in the chat, that the celebrations kind of started last night and are continuing through the weekend. No better way to add to those than with a little brown jug. There you go. The summer lager, the Hefeweizen, the honey brown. The honey brown is also part of that summer variety pack. You can see the spot there that Remis is playing, and of course the flagship brand, the 1919. If you're looking for a great spot to go for a beer on the weekend, why don't you pop down and visit them at the brewery on William Avenue. Great spot for patio drinks with friends. Grab a couple slices of pizza. You can pick up some stash for home, and you can do it all there at Little Brown Jug. But if you don't want to do that, and you don't even want to go to the beer store, go to littlebrownjug.ca. They've relaunched the website. It's easier than ever to get the great taste of Little Brown Jug delivered directly to your home. Got some great merchandise as well. You can check it all out at littlebrownjug.ca, and check out their events page too for where they're at in the community. I know they got a busy August, hitting a number of the farmers markets and other community events here in Manitoba. Countdown to Monday is on when live racing returns to Assiniboia Downs. Over the course of the weekend, you can certainly bet on tracks around the world at hpibet.com. But the Terrace Dining Room is open. The VLTs are open from 9 a.m. to 12:15 each and every day. And as far as live racing goes, much like Bombers or Goldeyes game, Valor FC, if you have your proof of vaccination, you can be in there. They're going 50% for the outdoor area and inside. And we'll be getting the gang together for the races coming up very soon at Assiniboia Downs. Find out more at asdowns.com. And a shout out to our friends at Breezy Bend, our golf sponsor. The finishing touches on the new 6th hole. Saw them laying the sod down yesterday. It's been such a great year out at Breezy, despite the lack of rain. Courses in absolutely mint shape. And as much as it's great on the golf course, it's also great on the patio and the clubhouse and much more, with great programs for you and your family. If you're looking for a great golfing home for next year, get on the waiting list, breezybend.ca, or give them a call and ask for Corey Johnson and tell them you want to get set up for next year to play with us out at Breezy Bend. All right, let's get Remis back in here. Remo, this last hour has absolutely flown by. I had a great time talking to John Hodge from 3 Down Nation about the Bomber game. And as I said, feel fortunate to be able to have the conversation that we just had with Sean Fitz-Gerald and to be doing the show today with the opportunity to talk about such a momentous victory for Canada in women's soccer with everyone here on the program.
Yeah, when I think I texted Sean this morning and Canada was down 1-0, so I thought maybe we would be having a different conversation, but of course Canada, scoring the penalty kick in the game to tie and holding on till the shootout and winning in very dramatic fashion. I mean, that was a game that was a roller coaster of emotions and left you crying with tears of joy at the end, and I love seeing the outpouring on Twitter for the entire team. And we loved this team back in 2012, and maybe the games were on at really weird times this year, except for this one that might be the highest rated 8 a.m. Friday morning programming ever. So I do want to see those ratings. I know they're replaying the game, but I got a lot of friends. I got a lot of texts after like, oh my God, did you just watch that? And it was awesome drama. And I am getting chills here just talking about Canada as a gold medal team in soccer, because we're so used to talking about USA and Canada, coming up short, and there was Canada beating US and then beating Sweden. And I mean, the images of Canada celebrating, after Christine Sinclair's long career, finally capping it with a gold medal, and then seeing the Swedish team just devastated. What
a way to lose!
I know.
Too. I mean, they had it on. They had a kick to win. And, for her to hit that one over the crossbar was devastating. But Labbe was absolutely nailed. She did the exact same thing against Brazil. Canada was down in the penalty shootout. After, of all people, Christine Sinclair bricked the first penalty of the shootout. They came back and did it again, not allowing a goal on the final 3 Swedish kicks. And that was absolutely devastating for those women. And that's part of the nature of the penalty kick stream. I mean, it's so tense. It's so exciting. You have a winner or a loser based on one shot. I mean, the difference between winning and losing is so narrow. That makes the victory maybe that much more exciting. But man, the agony of defeat, as they say, in a loss like that is one that will sting for a long time. And you couldn't help but feel for the Swedes who were absolutely disconsolate on the field after the loss.
Yeah, I agree. And look, they left it all on the field for 120 minutes. And going to shootout, win or lose, I mean, again, great way to win, horrible way to lose. And, Sweden, great team, but Canada was a bit better. And, man, those penalty kicks. I was ripping on them. Again, I was ripping on them during the Euro Cup, how it seemed like every game went to penalties, but it was awesome when you're on the right side.
Love them now.
Love them, yeah.
Best.
Yeah. Big fan.
Bus, yeah. BA split. Dez is the gal you need on the show, IMO. No kidding. Thanks for the tip.
Yeah, thanks.
We will definitely, and we're going to be in touch at some point, hopefully next week, but whenever it's available, Des will be on. Des can be on as often and as long as she wants at any point, but we do want to see that gold medal. And at some point when we get back to doing business normally, like we were before the pandemic, that's someone that I would love to have sit in with us for a show at some point if we could do it live in person. All right, Remo, let's get to there is a little bit of hockey news. Sounds like Darnell Nurse is about to break the bank. We knew that there was rumors of an 8-year extension, but man, some of the numbers that top defensemen are getting right now is completely blowing my mind. Reportedly in excess of $9 million, 8 times 9.25. Nurse had an incredible season last year, and it's probably a great time for him to cash in, but holy smokes. I mean, I would have never thought a month ago that we could be talking about $70+ million for Darnell Nurse.
Yeah, and it is official now. The Oilers have put out the release here. Let me bring up the picture. Ooh, look at this graphic. There it is, Darnell Nurse. Let me scroll down. Yes, 8-year with an AAV, $9.25 million. I believe that's more than Cale Makar. And I see a lot of people ripping this contract to shreds, saying it's the worst contract ever. Now, I don't know if it is or isn't, but I think it is probably an overpay. Darnell Nurse, very good player. It's possible, some of his numbers getting propped up playing with Connor McDavid. I mean, we saw him in the playoffs. I mean, he did play in that overtime game. I think he played like a ridiculous number of minutes. Again, very, very good. But when you look at what other defensemen are making, I mean, I think Ken Holland maybe jumped the gun a bit on this one. And I mean, you look at the Oilers' salary cap now. I mean, he's getting more than Draisaitl, a little less than McDavid. Zach Hyman's making money. Duncan Keith's making a lot of money. That's a lot. You're playing your elite guys a lot, but I'm not so sure Darnell Nurse is one of the. He's very good. I don't know if he's like an elite in the Cale Makar, Dougie Hamilton.
He's getting more money than Makar is. Now, admittedly, they were buying more UFA years, so you can kind of compare those that way. But I mean, man, he had 56 games last year. He had 16 goals and 20 assists for 36 points. Don't quote me on this, but I think 14 or 15 of those goals were at even strength, which actually tied him for even strength goal scoring with Leon Draisaitl. So he was in incredible position when it came to signing a new deal. And I think it speaks to just how important he is that, the outlay that they went and gave it to him. But it's all complicated by the fact that Adam Larsson isn't there anymore. And, much like Calgary, who's still, I think, trying to get over the loss of Mark Giordano in the expansion draft, they absolutely needed to keep Darnell Nurse. But going forward, that's not quite the team-friendly deal that I think they believe that they've got Connor McDavid on, considering how great he is, or even Leon Draisaitl. You're now getting into Leaf territory where you've got 3 or 4 players eating up about 40%, 50% of your cap.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to wait and see here. I'll pull up their cap-friendly right here. Yeah, you got McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, you got Nugent Hopkins, and then you got a bunch of small guys. I like what they did, getting Warren Fogle, and I thought that was a good pickup. And Hyman, might be a bit of a long deal, but for now, you think he's a pretty good player for now.
I like the Fogle ad, but I don't really like the fact that they traded Ethan Bear to get him.
Yes.
I mean, it seemed quite strange, and I know they've got a couple of young guys like Evan Bouchard that they're expecting to move in. But I'll tell you what, I'm a big fan of Ethan Bear. I think they will miss him, especially considering that Larsson has gone on the other side. The other defenseman that signed an 8-year deal was Adam Pelech in New York with the Islanders. I had to laugh when I saw the release through the CP that the Islanders announced that they'd signed Adam Pelech to an 8-year deal, and terms were not disclosed. Eventually, it all gets to cap friendly. What was the number that Pelech ended up inking with the guys on the island?
Yeah,
Lou Lamoriello?
8 years, $46 million for Adam Pelech, AAV of 5.75, and Barry Trotz came in, solidified the defense, and Adam Pelech was definitely part of that. And I'm good for him. I'm gonna be honest, didn't see too much of Pelech, but he's come along. He's become a very solid defenseman, and that's defenseman. Or if you want to make money in NHL, become a defenseman.
Well,
that seems to be the way to go.
And honestly, that makes these trades that Cheveldayoff made last week just look that much better. I mean, Brendan Dillon's coming here for 3 more years at 3.9.
Yeah,
trading for players that signed contracts a year or two ago, I think is going to help out your cap situation a lot more than inking guys right now. The one concern is, from a Jets perspective, is that they do need to ink Neal Pionk. And maybe the happiest guy right now is Pionk and Pionk's agent, because when you see the amount of cash being thrown around for defensemen, and considering the amount of UFA years the Jets would need to be buying if they sign him to a long-term deal, I think that number and the ask might keep going up right now as you see what's going on. I mean, Adam Pelech is getting almost $6 million. Solid defenseman, 4 goals, 10 assists, 14 points. Points are a big, we can debate how important that really is big picture to, a defenseman. Maybe it's defense first. Certainly that's what we were talking about in Winnipeg. But the bottom line is all that plays into contract negotiations in a big, big way. And, I'll tell you what, I think Larry Simmons and Kevin Cheveldayoff, as great of a job as they've done addressing other needs on the blue line, I'm not sure I certainly didn't figure that they'd be up against a market that has absolutely inflated defense salaries in a fashion that I don't think anybody saw coming when we're talking about this flat cap this year.
Yeah, we can thank the Blackhawks for their Seth Jones contract and Cale Makar, Dougie Hamilton cashing in. Who else? Zach Werenski. those are some big deals. So I had thought Pionk was maybe like a mid $5.5 million player. With this Pellick deal, maybe he comes in at 6. And I know the Jets like to keep things within a salary structure. I think they like to have based on how it's been. Sorry, I'm looking at it. They like to keep guys, in line, So does Pionk come in at a higher rate than Morrissey, who's currently 6.25? And if he does, how does that affect them being able to get Andrew Kopp? I don't know. I'm curious how it's going to work. He has his arbitration date, August 13th, so we're going to know in a week what it's going to be. Within a week.
Yeah, exactly. Within a week or potentially deal it. I think when we're talking Jets next week, that certainly will be kind of poking some of the insiders and guys in the know as to what they're hearing on that, because I'm sure there's conversations going. Considering what happened with Andrew Kopp, I imagine that both sides would love to avoid arbitration. The bottom line for the Winnipeg Jets is I think they really do see Neal Pionk as a key piece going forward. He's been a great player on the Jet Blue line, and I think will only be better in a much better situation, with higher level talent in the top 4 to play with going forward. So certainly is a priority. And then Andrew Kopp's arbitration date, 13 days later, August 26th, right at the end. So a little bit more time to get Kopp done. And to be honest, I think the priority is going to be Neal Pionk. And I think we'll see once that deal happens, what that might mean to the cap space and cash available for Andrew Kopp here in Winnipeg if he's going to be sticking around. But right now, if I had to bet, before Remo, we were talking about Neal Pionk's going to be in the high 5s. I think, speaking today, I'd be surprised if he didn't get a deal maybe in excess of what Josh Morrissey has right now. Morrissey, of course, signed for 8 years. But did it a few years ago. And as we've seen, there's been insane inflation when it comes to legit top 4 defensemen, of which Neal Pionk has proven to the Winnipeg Jets he absolutely is.
Yeah, Neal Pionk, I got to give myself bad take, old takes exposed. I was very critical of the Trouba deal.
You weren't the only one.
Yeah, this has been a total win. So major props to Chevy for getting Pionk and Heinola. And you look at, I'm just pulling up the stats here. I know GMs love looking at defense points. Defense a bit, I think, tougher to evaluate than maybe a traditional forward. Just because, they do so much that doesn't show up on a stat sheet. But Pionk had a great season. But was he top 50 defensive points? I thought he was. But apparently, there he is, 21st in points. And, if you want to do comparables, I don't know, Sam Gerard, Martinez, Yossi, and he's up there. There's Nurse. Just from a points perspective, I don't know, maybe that's a good way. So, listen,
he also led the team in hits. He did a lot. And to be honest, I still maintain that I think he was somewhat miscast as not being the number 1 option on the power play for the Winnipeg Jets. But at the end of the day, they're going to need to get in a room and figure something out. And I think everyone hoping that gets done before they end up having to go to arbitration. But as I said, the cash keeps flowing in for defensemen right now in the National Hockey League. Speaking of big money deals and inflation, much of what we just said about Darnell Nurse in the defense market in the National Hockey League, you can also apply to the quarterback market in the NFL, Reem. And once you get a guy, you got to keep that guy. And we've seen huge outlays. Really, Patrick Mahomes setting the bar with that $500 million extension, although didn't get as much guaranteed money as Josh Allen signed today with the Buffalo Bills. Reportedly a 6-year, $258 million extension for Josh Allen. And it's funny, Remo, think about speaking of bad takes, think about all the takes that the Bills blew it again when they drafted him out of Wyoming, I believe. He's turned into a legit star in this league. He's taken the Bills to places they haven't been in a long, long time. The city loves him. To me, this is a match made in heaven, but there still was a little sticker shock when we saw what Josh Allen was signing for.
Yeah, and Josh Allen, I think 2 years ago, very inaccurate quarterback, a lot of questions about him, but this past season, he suddenly became one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. He can beat you with his legs. He had a number of rushing touchdowns. He's basically like a second goal line back, too. So he's a franchise QB, no question. Pay him whatever he's worth for a quarterback. And, a lot of questions about, Buffalo. Franchise is going to stay there. They got stadium issues. But Josh Allen will be there 2028. That's a big one.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I guess we didn't talk about Kirk Cousins yesterday as well. Do we want to talk about the unvaxxed quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings that is driving his coaches crazy right now? This all started when the quarterback room needed to be quarantined for 5 days. The guys that weren't vaccinated, including Cousins, and their big practice with fans that was set to take place at the Dome, TD Bank Field or whatever it's called now, had one quarterback, and it was a guy that had never played before because all the other guys were in quarantine. I won't get to the reasons that Kirk Cousins is giving for it, but that Vikings situation, especially a quarterback having a COVID scare already, is not going to be a story I think that ends anytime soon. And it really does seem like there's a legitimate competitive advantage for teams like the Buccaneers, for example, that seem to have legit buy-in from top to bottom of the roster. They're not dealing with some of the stuff that Zimmer is getting frustrated in the Twin Cities right now.
Yeah, I mean, he said that he would encase himself with plexiglass. He's gonna become Bubble Boy for the Vikings, so he avoids close contact. He's gonna need like an astronaut helmet at all times. It seems like, because I don't know,
spacesuit.
I don't know how you avoid close contact with your teammates. I don't know how you lead. So he wouldn't really say his reasoning. Just deflected every single question. But I think it's going to be a big storyline in the NFL season, especially for fantasy players. And you have to wonder, I mean, is like Kirk Cousins that good that you can put up with this BS for a whole season? I know Mike Zimmer expressed his frustration. Other head coaches, Ron Rivera in Washington, expressing his frustration with players not wanting to get the shot, and I guess ignoring evidence from the top doctors in the United States who are offering communicate with these guys,
as well as from the team.
Yeah.
And you know what? Hey, this is just sort of it's a societal issue right now, and it's happening everywhere. But certainly in the NFL, with so much at stake and so much on the line, and the penalties that we've heard, if a COVID outbreak happens because of unvaxxed players, the team loses the game and nobody gets paid, Remis. And that, I think, has been a kick in the ass to a lot of the guys that were maybe on the fence. But obviously it hasn't worked with all of them. Maybe a guy with $45 million guaranteed doesn't need to maybe play nice with others.
Yeah, and they basically said, there's an easier way to avoid this, Kirk. You could just, get the shot instead of encasing yourself in plexiglass in a room.
Like that. No, he doesn't like that.
Yeah. And it's funny, not funny, but you switching over to CFL, there was a COVID scare this morning with Edmonton Elks. They had to cancel their practice, didn't release their depth chart, and canceled the media availability. So, but it seems like the game, it seems like no concerns right now that the game is in jeopardy. No concern, says Farhan Lalji.
Yeah, Dave Campbell in Edmonton said the statement from the Elks in regards to tomorrow's game, the Elks are continuing to prepare for tomorrow's scheduled home opener against the Ottawa Red Blacks. The team's walkthrough today was canceled due to COVID-19 protocols. Players, coaches, and staff are at the facility today in preparation for tomorrow's game. We'll continue to follow the necessary steps to ensure the health and safety of our players, coaches, and staff. Currently, we have no concern that the game will not be played. So that is certainly a good thing, Remis. And, if we thought we were having a tough time getting lines for these week 1 games, just wait till you add in some uncertainty as to who will even be able to play for Edmonton. I don't think we should be holding our breath till that line comes out. We do, however, have a line for tonight's game between the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the BC Lions. That one opened at 7 a couple hours ago. Not surprising. Money going in on the underdog a little bit, moving it to 6.5 right now. But that's pretty much right where we had when we did our predictions, Remis. I had 7, you had 6.5, and that's pretty much where it's landed.
Nailed it. Oh man, they should just called us to make the lines. Why did they wait so long? We knew the whole time.
Well, and I'll tell you what, we had a much better line for the Bomber Ticat game than actually came out and probably cost the books a lot of money, but that was a wonderful thing, especially for those of us that got in right when it went out and got more than plus 150 on the Bombers to win at home.
Yeah, and let's see any good props here. O'Brien Burnham over under receiving yards 86.5, Shaq Evans 69.5, I saw some, I think it was like DT, Derek Taylor, saying, oh yeah, Shaq Evans way over 3.5 receptions. I know he's one of the better guys at catching deep balls in the league. I may put a small wager on that one right now, actually. And I think there were some questions about Mike Riley and his health. Or sorry, Michael Riley.
Michael Riley.
Michael Riley, my bad. So, but I think I'm on the Saskatchewan side here. But if Michael Riley can stay healthy and stay upright, I like, BC and maybe some garbage time yards. But
I didn't catch that. What were the circumstances with Riley saying he was going to go from Mike to Michael? Is that
I didn't catch it.
It just all of a sudden that's happened. I mean, and it reminded me, of course, of our old pal Joel Armia, who got traded and became Yoel Armia. But going from Mike to Michael was not something I thought we'd be talking about going into the CFL season. Maybe he's just trying to change everything from last season, which was so miserable for Michael Riley, as he was on his keister more often than not because they couldn't protect a lick in front of him. To me, that's the biggest question going into this game tonight is how will the BC offensive line be able to protect their quarterback? Because if they don't get better than that, everything else doesn't really matter.
Yeah, Tracy wrote it in chat. I did see it here on 3 Down Nation that his mother passed away in March, and she did not like when people called him Mike. She liked when they called him Michael, and so he said, "You know what? Call me Michael Riley." So that's actually a really nice story. And yeah, he has been struggling to stay upright in BC. I read on 3 Down Nation as well that he's on a pitch count, that he's got some arm issues. So I wasn't too confident in BC. I do like Brian Burnham as a receiver for fantasy purposes, but I watched a lot of BC games in 2019 because there's always like the late game on a Saturday, and yeah, they were pretty ugly.
Well, speaking of Mike and Michael, Bad Takes Paris has said Mike Remis, which actually the only guy that I ever remember referring to you as Mike Remis was Darren Dreger.
Yeah, Darren Dreger.
When he was calling when you were on away for paternity leave. That was the famous question. He goes, guys, what's become of Mike Remis? And he just had a baby. He's coming back. We had a good laugh about that. Do you have anyone else that calls you Mike?
A few people do. People do. I think so. So yes.
I've never called you Mike or Michael, to be honest with you. It's pretty much always Reem or Remis, and that's just the way that it's worked. But I'm wondering on that. Yes, of course, Nikolai, not Nick.
Hey.
That's a tough one. I'm definitely guilty of calling Nikolai Ehlers Nick a lot, probably most of the time.
I don't know if you saw, but this is our Jets off-season news. Nikolai Ehlers, let me find his real account, not the fan account, but he did some modeling in Denmark this week. Here, one sec. Check this out. Look at this heartthrob. Probably gonna stick to hockey, but had a fun day modeling. And there
Love
he is.
it. That's awesome.
That's a nice sweatsuit there. He's got the hair done. And the Jets. I love all the comments. Have you ever wondered if there was something more life than being really, really ridiculously good looking? Quoting Derek Zoolander. Nate Thompson with the man rocket. Carson Dunn. Oh, there's Sports Talk Winnipeg. Who commented that with three fire? That was me. Oh, the Bud Light Seltzy can rating so handsome. So everyone getting in on this. So Nikolai Ehlers looking pretty good this offseason.
Ehlers has a great Insta. He's a great Insta follow. I mean, he'll put up some fun stuff of what he's doing. I saw he had a nice dinner date with mom earlier, on his Insta story. But when you get geared up for a modeling debut, that's not Insta story. You got to do a post. Yeah. That has to stay for eternity on the account.
You got to post that. And someone comments, Bravo Bryce says, a jet in a tracksuit. I mean,
they've come a long way.
Yeah.
By the way, just before we finish up, there were some great signs at the game last night. And I think we all heard the Riders suck chant, and that just meant that nature was healing and we were all back. There was, though, a guy, and I'm not sure what the punchline was, but there was a sign. They were showing a couple fans on the Jumbotron, and a guy held up a sign that said, Kane bet on the Bombers or bet on the Ticats or something like that. So like the Evander Kane story still gets run. And even at a Blue Bomber football game, someone was taking a shot at Evander. with all the troubles that he's been having. And he's now ended up on BSO. And when our man Robert Littell has entered the chat, Remis, you're probably in some sort of trouble, which Evander Kane certainly seems to be in.
Yeah, and one other thing that was at the Bomber game yesterday, guys coming dressed as Chris Streveler in fur coats, and two of them tracked you down and grabbed a koozie off you. Shout out to these guys. I saw them taking pictures with fans. This is an all-time picture on our Instagram.
Huge hit. So they sent a tweet at Winnipeg Sports Talk and at Hustlerama, which I saw saying, "Hustler, we're on our way to the Rum Hut for a koozie." They were obviously listening to the show yesterday. So I made a point of saving two, because if you rolled in like that and call us out, we're definitely going to hook you up. But I believe one of those two dudes, Remis, is actually the host and helped me out with the pierogi eating contest at the Spirit of Ukraine Pavilion. Yes, exactly. So we got talking about that. They're all fired up to get it going again for next year. But yeah, the Streveler costumes were amazing. And Streveler himself, who did a nice little cameo on the Jumbotron at the start of it and crushed a Bud Light, much to the delight of everybody. Streveler retweeted it, and he was getting a ton of people hitting him up with these guys doing it. But they were a huge hit last night. And you know what? Those guys sort of, I think, in a lot of ways, encapsulate just how much fun last night was. I mean, people getting up, people having some fun, people getting together with old friends, and those guys certainly in the area, in and around the Brugal Rum Hut, certainly did steal the show. So I have to say, you know who else stole the show? The koozies, Remis. The koozies. More and more people, when they get a koozie, they realize, why the heck didn't I have one already? But there was a lot of cans being sold, as much as they could do, and they looked a lot better in those Winnipeg Sports Talk koozies. So thank you to everyone that shouted me out and asked for one from listening to the show yesterday. I will definitely be bringing another stockpile when we get to the game. I guess it's next Friday, beginning the home and home against the Toronto Argonauts.
Yeah, next Friday. I'm just going through our Instagram stories, so you did post that, and people were definitely fired up. And we have had a couple people have had him. I dropped some off at Jet Oil Tom's house earlier today. I know he's excited, but it's a week away, and we'll get a look at the Argos against Calgary. MBT starting at quarterback. He can definitely sling it. I think he's kind of underrated. I'm curious what Calgary's going to look like. They seem to be on a bit of a decline, but I think they can still compete. They have a lot of dudes. We'll see about their defense, though, and we do have some games. What's the game tonight? BC, Saskatchewan. I think it's going to be
BC Sask. BC Sask, and then tomorrow is the doubleheader, Toronto and Calgary, and Edmonton and Ottawa. Sean Lishka, now they have to commit to the fur coats for every game. Trust me, those guys had so much fun. The guy on the right is in the Hoosley Ukrainian choir as well. Not sure if he's in the choir. He's definitely Ukrainian, and he is involved in the Spirit of Ukraine Pavilion. But it wouldn't surprise me at all. My old buddy Mike Lay from the True North office was in the choir for a long time. Those guys, when it comes to anthems, maybe the best in the biz. But anyways, couple thanks. Our buddy, the captain, Murray Rempel, was there last night, repping the Winnipeg Sports Talk logo on one of the hoodies from the Winnipeg Sports Talk store. Sometimes we forget to let you know, but if you didn't know already, we do finally have some merch. You can go to the winnipegsportstalk.com, click on the store. There's the captain, looking great, and man, those things turned out awesome. So we certainly love that. If you haven't already, check it out. And as Remis mentioned, we do have koozies. You can get a 4-pack of them, and I think we sold a few of them after the game, Remis. Maybe people saw those and wanted to get on them, but they are available right now if you would like. Leighton Janis, thank you very much. Super chat, amazing week of shows. Riders suck. So glad that you were able to come in for the game last night and enjoy it with all your friends back in the peg. But Remo, yes, the koozies are available as we continue to grow things that are out there for our friends here on Winnipeg Sports Talk.
Yeah, people want a way to support what we're doing here. You can do that with a super chat, but also you want to get something in return, then we do have some stuff available at many different price points. So thank you everyone who's supporting, because I know a lot of people see the stuff in the wild and are like, Winnipeg Sports Talk, what's that? Because believe it or not, there are people that don't know that we're here doing this. And even when I was walking around the concourse, I had people tapping me on the arm or yelling, "Hey, Remo, love the podcast." So it was kind of cool.
No, it really was. The reaction we had from folks yesterday was just great. Everything about last night was great, from getting there to, I mean, listen, we're first world problems. Oh, it took way too long to get a hot dog, or it was tough to get a beer or something like that. Hey, listen, I'm sure that'll get fixed up. The bottom line is, it was a night to remember. 2 years in the making, raising that new Grey Cup banner and kicking things off with a big win in a Grey Cup rematch over the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Anyways, it's been a great week of shows. Cannot wait for next week. We'll, of course, have the latest on the Winnipeg Jets, what's going on in the Neal Pionk negotiations. We'll be able to talk a lot of CFL after we've seen 8 of the 9 teams play their first game this week, and much, much more, wrapping the Olympics as well. What do you got going on this weekend, Reem? Anything fun? Hey, Tyson Ducharme, yeah, WST tailgate party. Trust me, we're gonna work on that as well.
Yes. This weekend, well, I want to come to your house, your place Sunday. I got to set up our new camera. I bought a new camera for you. I'm gonna show you how to use it. I'm gonna set it up in the appropriate position. It's gonna be better quality. Hopefully, no glare off your glasses.
How lucky am I to have a CTO like this? We're going to make a house call. And it is funny, like literally, we've been doing this show for 5 months, since March 8th was our first show, with the exception of a couple drop-offs. Like, I don't know how many times we've even been in the same place at the same time, but you could count them on 1 or 2 hands, that's for sure.
It's been like at most 5 times. I did bump into you. I know a lot of people had trouble bumping into you at the game. I did see you, and I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. I've talked to you like how many hours over this the last 5 months. Almost like I don't know what to do when I see you. When I saw you in person, it was pretty funny. Although it was tough because I'm walking around the concourse with a friend, and I'm trying not to get lost. So my stop and chat time is limited. I did bump into G Liverpool. I saw Rick Ralph on the concourse.
Rick was there. It was great to see Rick. Now, G Liverpool, he tweeted at Gary, informing him that he would be showing up with both of his championship rings.
I saw
one for the Gold Eyes, one for the Bombers. I missed the GFL.
I only saw the Bomber one, and I know they were selling those replica rings. They sound pretty sweet. But what else do I got? Oh yeah, you know what I have? I have a wedding on Saturday.
Whoa.
Yeah, first one in a while, and they used to have like
Zoom wedding?
No, it's just a party on Saturday. So it used to be, have shifts. Be like, okay, you can cut this shift 7 to 8:30, the next shift, 9 to whatever. And now they're just like, screw it. Just, the rules have changed. Come whenever, you don't have to leave at the time we told you. So that's going to be new for me. First time in a while.
Bravo Bra asking, how many Gitchcoin does a hoodie cost? And Lishka, 420 Gitchcoins. That sounds about right for you, Gitch. Oh, and it sounds like there's some disc golf going down at Happy Land on Saturday. May have to get in on that. I guess we'll wrap it up. I mean, what an amazing week of shows. What a great day. And this is one of the most fun shows we've ever had. Because I think you can tell I'm still buzzing over last night, being able to see so many of you, the reaction we're getting for what we're doing here. And bottom line, just getting back in, celebrating the Grey Cup championship and seeing the Bombers kick off the season in such impressive fashion. But it was much more than what happened on the field. It was about us getting together again as sports fans in our beautiful stadium and doing what we love to do. And then to have our Canadian women pull off that gold medal victory today. We'll be talking about this for years. And we'll certainly, I'm sure, be talking about it as well next week. Can't wait. We'll hook up with Des Scott at some point for sure. But it's been a very, very fun 24 hours if you are a sports fan with a pulse here in the city of Winnipeg, both for the Bombers and Des and the Canadian women's national team. Do want to thank our newest sponsor, Canadian Club. Mix in a CC, maybe in ginger ale or something on the weekend. You can pick those up at all of your local liquor stores. And the Jim Beam Stillhouse, the Brugal Rum Hut, all available at Bomber Games. We'll be having a few of those next Friday, and looking forward to some great giveaways and doing some fun stuff with them now with the Beam Suntory team on board with us. So really appreciate them and coming on board with us. Of course, Royal Sports, Not AutoCorp, Paramount Services Limited, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Little Brown Jug, Assiniboia Downs, Breezy Bend Country Club, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, and CoolBet.com. Everybody, thank you. It was a great week. We'll do it again on Monday. Have an awesome weekend. Bask in the glory of a pretty great 24 hours in sports. Enjoy the rest of the Olympics, the rest of CFL kickoff weekend, and we'll talk all about it back here on Monday on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a great weekend, everyone, and thanks for joining us.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.